Hi, and welcome to part one of this series about maintaining our university websites with Cascade CMS. In this first video, we're just going to go over in general the importance of our websites, how we maintain them, and we'll just touch on the key concepts behind using Cascade. We won't get into any of the specifics in this video. Those will be in later videos, but this is an important foundation for understanding how to best maintain our websites. I think it's worth saying that the importance of our websites has never been greater. For several years now, research has shown a college's website is the #1 most influential resource that prospective students use for their college search. And by a large margin, prospective students use a school's website first to reach out to us, typically to request more information. So when we're talking about our websites, we're talking about udmercy.edu and its variety of subdomains. www, which is the main website, which contains a lot of information for current students and prospective students, admissions information, and it's the first site that most people will come to if they're just generally looking for information on the University of Detroit Mercy. And then we've got several other subdomains that are specific to colleges and schools: architecture, business, dental. Dental patients is for the dental clinic that the School of Dentistry provides to the public. Also engineering and science, health professions, law, and last but not least, liberal arts. Those are on your screen. Those are the actual subdomains that you would use in the URL, so you're probably familiar with most of those. The main thing to keep in mind is that all these websites have one primary purpose, and that is recruitment of students. Getting students to find out about us and want to enroll is why the websites are online. We do use the websites for some other things, but strategically we've got to prioritize the recruitment function of the websites, and so please always keep that in mind. We're always going to prioritize recruitment on all our websites. There are other websites that we use, lots of partner websites, third-party websites that we integrate in our ecosystem of our online presence. But we don't directly control those through the same methods that we'll cover in this series. But these websites you see here are maintained in the way that we'll cover. There are three general kinds of people involved in the websites. There are content experts. These are the people in the various areas of the university that are the experts in their, whether it be their department or their administrative unit. They'll be the experts on the curriculum, the goals of a given academic program or of a office. So those are the content experts. They're the ones who day to day are dealing in the business of the university. We also have marketing experts. These are people who are very good writers. They're good editors. They have an eye on what works in different media, including the web, how things should be written and not written for the web, how we can get people excited about what they're reading or seeing on our websites. That's not a skill most people have. It's a specific discipline in and of itself, so that's a separate area of people involved in the websites. And then finally, of course, we have the web experts who have the technical view on how websites work, the coding, the various servers and systems that are involved. That's really kind of the back end of a website. They're involved in making sure, graphics and pages load properly, things work on different devices, stuff like that, more technical aspects. All three people are indispensable in making a website effective. So who should do what on the websites? Well, I broke it down here. I think it's important to understand. The content experts, which for most people watching this video, that will be you. Your job is to regularly regularly review all your website content for your area. I'm going to reiterate that a few more times in this video because really it doesn't happen enough. People need to understand that, again, websites are the number one way that prospective students view us, evaluate us, and so we've got to regularly, periodically look at our websites and make sure they're up to snuff. Keep content up to date and accurate. Use the built-in design and layout options that we have created for the website. We'll look at those more later, but the point is that we don't expect you to be doing any kind of website design. That's done, and it's important to keep that consistent. So we just ask you to use what's provided. And if you have any questions or problems with your web content or your website, then we encourage you to not hesitate and just contact the marketing and communications department. Our contact information is there, and we'll be happy to talk to you about anything having to do with marketing your programs, including the website. Now, the other two groups of people here are also listed. The marketing experts, as I said, they ensure the effectiveness of the content. You can have people who are excellent writers academically, but when it comes to writing exciting marketing or advertising style content to make people really interested and want to click a button or follow up or take an action to contact us, that's a different skill. And so marketing experts come into play there. They keep the website focused on our business strategy for the university. They make sure the writing and the imagery is appealing and well done and professional and attractive. And so that's what the marketing experts help with. And of course, again, the web experts. This gets a little more into the weeds as we start to look at later on how to update websites in our system. The web experts are the ones I'd ask you to contact when you want to add, move, rename, or delete any pages on the website. I ask you not to do that yourself because there are technical considerations that few people understand. Also, if you want to add files to your website, including image files or PDF files, we'd like you to consult with us at least, because very few people are expert in all the different considerations there of how files, in addition, unlike web pages, files like PDFs and images have their own considerations. Web experts are also here to help organize the website content. That's a whole area of knowledge in and of itself to make the website usable and helpful for visitors, that it be organized in a reasonable way. Also, if there's any time that we need to adjust any design or add some special coding to a web page, obviously the web experts are the people to go to for that. And there's a whole range of web best practices that, again, are often technical in nature, but also include strategic focus, organization, content usability, accessibility, and all kinds of areas like that. That, again, that's why the web experts are important. So when it comes to those things in purple, let's leave those to marketing and communications department, and we're very happy to be available to you whenever you need for those things. Focusing down on the content experts role, this is just a rehash of the bullet points on the previous slide and a little more information. Again, your task is to regularly review your website content. That means you should schedule and prioritize periodic reviews. We see very often that checking the website is the first thing that falls off people's priority lists, and then the next thing you know, 5 years have gone by, no one's looked at the website, it's embarrassingly out of date. And so if you don't put that on your calendar and actually prioritize it, that will be you next. When you are reviewing your website, it's very important to remember that your target audience, meaning your prospective students, their opinion on what is good or interesting far outweighs your own opinion. We see many websites where the content expert has a particular view on what they think is interesting or valuable, and it's very often the case that that does not coincide with what a prospective student, or a current student for that matter, thinks is important or interesting or valuable. So ask, ideally prospective students, but more practically current students, what they think is good or bad about your web pages and your website, and understand that their opinion is gold. As far as keeping the content up to date and accurate and making those improvements that you get from the feedback from your target audience, that's where we use Cascade, and we'll be talking about that much more. Again, using the built-in design and layout options for the web pages, again, will be a function of Cascade. And lastly, again, contacting Marcom, which is the Marketing and Communications Department, it's a little nickname. Ask us anytime. Our phone number is 313-993-1254. For the web specifically, you can look at our web pages at udmercy.edu/web. Okay, the ideal web workflow when you're creating and maintaining a website. Step one is the content expert supplies the information needed to attract, inform, and persuade the primary audience. Again, this is prospective students for recruitment. The content goal is to connect what they, the audience, wants with what we, the university, wants them to do. Step two is that the content expert and a marketing expert work together to assemble the content into a polished, effective draft. Again, effective in terms of recruitment and satisfying the needs of our most important website visitors, which is prospective students and then current students primarily. Step three is that the web experts would organize and format the polished content into web pages according to the technical constraints and best practices. This includes laying out images, putting in headings, and formatting of all different kinds. And then step four, again, to repeat periodically and to prioritize that periodic repeating review of the content and updating it and improving it with any input you're able to get from your prospective audience. Okay, now we're going to talk about Cascade a little bit. Cascade is now called Cascade CMS. The CMS stands for Content Management System, which is a common industry acronym for a system that we use to manage our content. In other words, it's where we build and maintain the main university websites. Why do we use Cascade? Well, it gives us three major benefits. It enables content experts to maintain their pages, meaning different employees across the university can log in and update information when it needs to be updated. Cascade also tracks changes and keeps past versions of pages, so you are able to revert to a previous version or find out what happened on a page, especially if you have multiple people working in an area. That's very handy, comes in very handy with some regularity. Also, Cascade enforces that consistent design, the page templates, the layout, the design. One of the website best practices we know from research is that a consistent design across the websites increases the usability of the website among users, site visitors, and that means that the site is more effective and useful for them. Also, the consistent design is really the only way we can maintain so many web pages and websites. We don't have a large staff across the university. We're pretty thin on the number of people who can actually change a a website design or things like that. So we can't have a bunch of people going in there and messing things around. So enforcing that consistent design really makes sure that the web pages all look good and work right. If you've been using Cascade before, you were using probably version 7 for the last several years. We are now upgrading to Cascade 8. And if you're previously familiar with Cascade, you might want to know Cascade 8, where they changed the name to Cascade CMS, used to be called Cascade Server. 8 is a major new version. The first thing you're going to notice when you log in is it has an all new visual design and a new look and feel. This is the biggest difference in Cascade 8. Several of the features and buttons and things like that have moved or been reorganized, but generally it works pretty similar to older versions of Cascade and Cascade 7. But it's the look and feel and the design that you'll have to get used to. And this is the new logo here for Cascade, now CMS. To access Cascade, it's the same as before. You use a web browser. You go to cascade.udmercy.edu. And to log in, you use the same username and password that you use for my.udmercy.edu, the university's quote-unquote my portal. That's the username and password you're going to use to get into Cascade. Parenthetically, so this is not necessarily the same username and password you might use for the Microsoft Outlook email that we also have. You want to use this username and password for the my.udmercy.edu portal. When you get into Cascade, you're going to be dealing primarily with 3 kinds of what they call assets. Pages, of course, which correspond to web pages. Files, which, as I mentioned, will be image files, maybe other kinds of files that you wish to provide, like a PDF. And folders, which help organize all these assets into different containers, just like you do on Windows or Mac when you use their directories. The overall steps in Cascade are pretty similar to before. Once you log in, the first step is to select the correct site to make sure you're looking at the right website that you have content on, because Cascade contains about 8 or 9 of them now. Then you navigate in that site to the desired asset that you want, whether it's a page or a file. You edit that asset. Of course, these things we'll be going into detail on later. After you've edited the asset, then you preview the changes as a draft in Cascade. You'll see this. This is one of the bigger differences in older versions of Cascade is that Cascade 8 really enforces and it's got benefits. When you first save some changes, you will be previewing a draft. Once you're happy with the draft, then you save the changes by submitting the page as an actual saved version. And then you need to publish the asset to the website. This last step is needed before you will see the changes appear on the live website that users will visit. Here's a diagram showing that. In the upper left, you'll see Cascade users. These are content experts or other employees here who are helping build or maintain a website. And they are using Cascade CMS. And within Cascade, they're looking at the pages and the assets and making their changes. When they make their changes to the page or file in Cascade, those changes are only in Cascade. It is not until you use Cascade's publish function that the updated files and pages get published to the live web server, which is what all our website visitors connect to. So it's important to understand that if you make changes in Cascade and then you go to the live website and look for those changes, you will not see them until this publish function has occurred. And so that's by design. That way you can be working on assets and not publish those changes until you're ready. Before we wrap this one up, I want to point out that the design of the website is really much more complex than it has been in the past. A few years ago, we launched a responsive web design. That's because most web traffic, and this is across the board, generally in the world, most web traffic now involves small mobile devices like phones. People aren't looking at web content as much on a desktop or laptop computer as usually from a phone. So our website design is responsive, which means it works on phones, laptops and desktop displays and tablets, pretty much any size screen that someone calls up our website on. It will lay out properly and look good. That wasn't the case in the past, and you still might see some older websites on the web that don't look good on a phone, but this was a big step up we took not too long ago. This responsive design, however, is much more complicated technically than the old designs, meaning the coding is much more complex. So any design changes are not something we can just slap together. They're significant projects, and they must be carefully planned and tested on a variety of devices. So the reason I put that in there is because we fairly regularly get someone asking, hey, can we make this blue? Could we put this down here or this over there? No, we have a pretty flexible and feature-rich layout and design now. It's got lots of different options you can use. Big changes to that involve very specific coding and technical work. So again, just wanted to make sure that you understood that, and that while you are looking at your web pages, please make sure to remember, look at it on a phone. We'll look at that more a little later when we're actually in Cascade. I can show you how you can get a rough estimate of what it looks like on a phone, but also test it on a real phone. Think mobile first, because that's where most people are looking at our websites now. So that's going to be the last point I make in this one. Hopefully that gives you kind of a basis that will help you understand how we're doing the websites, why we're doing the websites, and look to the next videos for the details on how to use Cascade.